What if a mother's love was so strong it refused to die? So powerful that it reached out from beyond the grave, forever searching for a lost child? Well, today we're going deep into the chilling legend of Belpore, a village that looks perfectly normal during the day, but holds a truly terrifying secret when the sun goes down. This is the question that echoes through the nights in Belpore. The story goes that after dark, when everything is still and quiet, a figure appears under a huge old peepal tree. It's the spirit of a woman, and in her arms she's cradling a child that isn't there. Her voice is just a whisper on the wind, always asking that same heartbreaking question: where is my child? But to really understand the ghost, you have to understand the woman she used to be. You see, our story doesn't start with a ghost. It starts with a woman named Anjali. And for 8 long years, living in her husband Raghuvir's home, she was, for all intents and purposes, buried alive. Every single day. And look, what's so brutal about this is that it wasn't just one thing. It was a relentless, crushing weight from every direction. Her family-in-law taunted her about her dowry. Her mother-in-law branded her barren, a terrible curse in their community. Her own husband would shame her in public. The whole village gossiped, turning her pain into their entertainment. And behind closed doors, it was even worse. Regular, brutal beatings. This story isn't just about a monster of a husband. It's about how the pressure of an entire society can crush a person, reducing her worth to just one thing: their ability to have a son. In the middle of all this darkness, Anjali held on to one single, desperate hope. She convinced herself, she had to believe, that if she could just become a mother, everything would magically fix itself. The abuse would stop, the insults would end, she'd finally be accepted. That one hope was the only thing keeping her going. And as we'll see, it was a hope that was tragically, horribly misplaced. And here is where the story gets just brutally ironic. A doctor finally gives her the news she's been praying for. Congratulations, you are going to be a mother. For Anjali, it was pure joy. But her family's reaction? It was ice cold. They basically told her, "We don't care about you. We just want an heir. You were nothing more than a vessel." The pregnancy didn't save her. It just exposed the true, monstrous reason they kept her around. So, did things get better? No, they got so much worse. Even while pregnant, they forced her to do heavy work. They starved her, giving her just stale leftovers while they ate full meals. Her body was wasting away, even as her baby was growing. It got so bad that a doctor flat out told the family that her malnourishment was putting her life and the baby's life in danger. They heard him, and they did absolutely nothing. And all of this constant cruelty and neglect, it was all building up to one final, horrific night. And you know what set it all off? Something as simple, as trivial, as serving cold food. That's all it took for everything to explode. It kicked off with her husband, Raghuvir, screaming at her, his breath reeking of alcohol. He accused her of disrespecting him, of doing it on purpose. And then, without another word, his hand cracked across her face. The first slap. Sudden. Vicious. Deliberate. Anjali stumbled back, but he wasn't done. He started kicking her again and again, aiming for her frail, pregnant body. And all the while, her mother-in-law and father-in-law, they just sat there, watching. Their silence was just as violent as his kicks. Raghuvir grabbed her and threw her against the wall. She cried out, her voice breaking as she begged them, "Mother, Father, please save me." But all she got back were cold, empty stares. In that moment, she knew she was completely and utterly alone. And this was her last desperate plea. She curled up on the floor, her hands protectively wrapped around her stomach, begging him to stop. Not for her anymore, but for their unborn child. It was her final, selfless act. And then there was only silence. She was gone. Now, in the aftermath of this horror, you'd expect panic, maybe remorse, but there was nothing. Instead, what we see is a chilling, step-by-step cover-up. First, her mother-in-law says they can't have a funeral. The whole village would find out, so they deny her even that basic dignity. Second, they get rid of the body. Raghuvir carried her out to the field and buried her in a shallow grave. And third, they just erased her. They walked back into the house, washed their hands, sat down to eat dinner, and went to bed as if nothing had ever happened. 3 nights went by. 3 nights of silence. But on that third night, the haunting began. And it didn't start with a terrifying scream or a ghostly wail. It started with something far, far creepier. The faint, unmistakable sound of a baby crying. Okay, so to really understand what happens next, you need to know about this concept from Indian folklore, the Garbhavati Atma. This is the spirit of a pregnant woman who died a violent, unjust death. And in these traditions, a spirit like this is seen as uniquely powerful, uniquely vengeful, because it's not just one soul crying out for justice, it's two. This wasn't just any ghost. This was a force of nature born from an unimaginable crime. And that force was now completely focused on the house. The sound of the crying baby never stopped. It seeped through the walls day and night. Soon, a heavy, suffocating pressure filled every room, making it feel hard to breathe. Then they started seeing her. Chilling visions of Anjali, a silent shadow rocking a ghostly baby in her arms. Before long, her own agonizing screams joined the cries, echoing through the halls. The terror was so absolute that the three of them, husband, mother, and father, started sleeping in the same room, huddled together like frightened children. But you can't lock out a ghost. One night, a freezing wind blew through their sealed room. They felt a crushing weight on their chests, an invisible force stealing the very air from their lungs. They couldn't move, couldn't even scream, as the spirit of Anjali stood before them one last time. The next morning, villagers broke down the door and found all three of them dead. The cause? Suffocation. Anjali's revenge was complete. So as you can imagine, the news of an entire family dying like that sent a shock wave of pure terror through Belpore. This wasn't village gossip anymore. This was a real-life curse. Convinced they were dealing with a powerful, angry spirit, they did what people in these stories always do. They called in an expert, a holy man. He came, surveyed the house and the field, and he confirmed their absolute worst fears. The spirit was Anjali, and she was buried right there, in that field. And so began this desperate attempt to make things right, to bring peace to the dead and the living. First, they had to call Anjali's parents to break the horrible news. Then, they had to exhume her body from that makeshift grave. To try and appease her spirit, they brought offerings of things she loved as a child, chocolates, her favorite doll. And finally, they performed a proper funeral, a ritual for both her and her unborn baby, hoping to finally let their souls rest. But here's the thing. Some wounds just run too deep. The rituals might have brought some calm to the village, but they couldn't erase what happened. The story goes that the haunting of Belpore never really ended. Even today, they say that after midnight, those fields where she was buried turn unnaturally cold. A shadow emerges from the silence, a permanent scar on the soul of the village. And so, the story ends exactly where it began, with a mother's ghost, forever wandering the dark, forever searching for the child that was so cruelly torn away from her. It leaves us with this final, chilling question that hangs in the air, a question about a pain so profound that even death can't silence it, and an injustice so great it haunts a place forever.